Welcome to Journeys with the No Schedule Man, exploring authentic stories of personal growth and lessons learned from people living true to themselves with creativity, passion, and purpose. For all past episodes, subscribe on iTunes or visit noscheduleman.com. And please connect, share, and contribute with a comment, rating, or review. And now, here's your host, the No Schedule Man, Kevin Bulmer.
I've been known to struggle with reality, not that it is any real mystery.
The question this week is, do you have the courage it takes to tell your own story in your own way? For many of us, that sounds a lot easier than it actually is. Welcome. I'm Kevin Bulmer. This is Journeys with the No Schedule Man, helping to create positive change. And we do that by exploring and sharing authentic conversations on personal and professional growth. You can't have growth without change. So we embrace that around here. You can find all past episodes of this podcast worldwide on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, and at noschedulemanpodcast.com. If you're in the United States, iHeartRadio and Google Play Music have us on the U.S. feeds of those channels. If you'd like to continue the conversation and have daily access to me, I'd love that, and I invite you to join me in my online coaching community. It's a private, subscription-based Facebook group. It's called The Turtle Tribe. It's a place where you'll get daily support through coaching, hints, tips, encouragement, empowerment, and creative collaboration. As I mentioned, it is a membership-based community. There is a free 7-day trial, so you can go and ensure that it's a good fit for you. You'll find out everything you need at theturtletribe.com. Why the Turtle Tribe? It's all explained on that page. We'd love to have you. As for the podcast, today we're joined by my friend Katie Kozlowski, a spiritual teacher, self-realization coach, and healer, although, as she says in this conversation, she more recently has been referring to herself as a wizard, which I think is a pretty good term. Katie also does a lot of professional voiceover work and can now add author to that list. She has contributed to a book which is just about to be released at the time that we're releasing this episode. It's called Simply Woman, Stories from 30 Magnificent Women Who Have Risen Against the Odds. And Katie's chapter, her contribution is called From Princess to Prisoner. She talks a little bit about the process, well, actually a lot about the process of how that all came together and the significance of bringing that story to life and contributing it in that book, Simply Woman, in the episode that you're about to hear. Now, Katie's been here before. It was almost exactly a year ago. You can hear that in episode 40. It's called Learning to Love Yourself. It's a tremendous episode. Katie shares very transparently about her own experiences of growing up and the marginalization that she experienced and some of the nastiness and how difficult the time she found of really, well, loving herself, to be honest with you, and embracing her own authenticity, creativity, sense of self-worth, and what the process has been for her at identifying that and then really allowing that to blossom and to flower. And it's really been a pleasure to get to know her over the course of the last year, and I'm thrilled for her to see that she's taken on that process to the point where she's able to contribute to this book I just mentioned and put that story together from princess to prisoner. Now, this particular conversation in today's episode, it took on a bit of a life of its own, and it really became about the courage that it takes to tell your own story. That sounds so simple, but most of us don't do it. I see it in business. I see it in life. In business, I've spent so much time working with businesses, and particularly small businesses and entrepreneurs, nonprofit groups, on and on and on helping them with their marketing and their advertising. And what they do almost exclusively is they just copy what they see everybody else doing. And I would submit to you that's exactly what we do in our own lives. We look around and we see what other people are doing, and because they're doing it, we think that makes it safe. So we start doing the same things, or we think we should want the things that it looks like they want. We never even stop and consider the fact that those people might not have any idea any more than we do of what they really want. They're just following everybody else, maybe even you. And so round and round and round we go on this merry-go-round, following people that don't know where they're going and listening to people that don't really know what it is that they're saying. So when you have those little murmurs in your own gut, in your spirit, intuition you could call it, about what really resonates with you and who you really are and what you want to do and what you don't, how often do you sense that and then go the other way because you think that that's what you should be doing? I've done more than my fair share of that. It's a mistake. It's a mistake. It is a mistake. And Katie's going to give you all kinds of reasons why it's a mistake, and a lot of information and background on how she's had to realize that and go from doing the things that she really wanted to do to trying to steer it into what she thought she should be doing, to having it come all the way back around again to say, no, if you really want to contribute uniquely into society, into other people's lives, and into business, and into a book, in Katie's case, you've got to be yourself. You've got to bring forth your own creativity and your own gifts in your own way. But doing that, unfortunately, takes a massive amount of courage. So, hopefully, conversations like this will encourage you to do just that. Some of the key things I took away from this chat with Katie include, number one, trying to figure out what might sell as opposed to what you really want to create. And when Katie was going over this part of the conversation, I was just sitting here nodding and a big thumbs up in the air. And it just, I can so relate as a creative person myself. And this plays right back into what I was just talking about, of how easy it is to get caught in that trap of copycatting and looking at the safe way or what does sell versus what really resonates with what we think we're supposed to be creating. If you go back and read the book, The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles, I mean, the book's been around, 100 years or more, something like that. It's not a new idea. It's a fantastic little book. You can read it in an evening or two. And among the great things he talks about is to get rid of the idea of competition and to embrace the idea of creativity, that your job is to create, not to compete for what's already been created. So when you're looking at what we think, because I'll include myself in this, might sell, we're looking at stuff that's already sold. We're looking at other models. We're looking at stuff that's already been created. And we're either trying to compete or compare and copy with that, as opposed to create something new that resonates with you. Listen for Katie's version of that. Number two, she talks about the power of imagination and storytelling and how that's how we used to teach people, through telling stories and parables and plays. Now everybody wants how-to in 3 easy steps. I see this all the time and it drives me bonkers. But what we relate to are stories. And that's how things used to be a long, long time ago. For some reason, we've sort of gotten away from that over the last many generations, you could argue. But you could also argue that we're starting to get back to that. But the power of imagination and storytelling, Katie's got some great insights on that. And as the title of this episode, it takes courage to tell your story. And that's what Katie has done by putting forth a chapter called From Princess to Prisoner as part of the forthcoming book, or depending on when you're listening to this, it may have been out for a while. Yeah, but the book is called Simply Woman, Stories from 30 Magnificent Women Who Have Risen Against the Odds. She's one of them. Here's Katie Kozlowski on finding the courage to tell your story on Journeys with the No Schedule Man. Katie, why would or why should a guy read a book called Simply Woman?
That is a great question. And I have to say that I've been getting a lot of men asking me about this book, which really excites me because we're in a place right now where everybody's really interested in figuring out kind of like how we got here and what they can do to help, and just sort of, what are the missing pieces? And that's one of the reasons why this book is so powerful for both men and women, is that just like a woman is sort of enlightened by reading stories from other women, I know a lot of men who are just curious to learn and to support, there's been so much of this feminism in general, feminists in general, and I am a proponent of both men and women. I love everyone, and it's very easy to sort of say men are mean. There's none of that in this book, and I think that that's one of the beautiful things why anybody might enjoy reading it, is that it gives you a chance to see that side of it and maybe understand why someone is the way they are, or sort of what might have happened or what got misconstrued, and learn. And so we all come to a better understanding. So that's how I would answer that question.
I don't like to ever get too deeply into things that are time or date specific, because we never know when somebody's going to come across a show like this. But at the time that we're recording this, coming up at the end of winter in 2018, it seems like there have been a lot of stories emerge about, how can I say it, Katie? Because I know that you're probably in sync with what I'm getting at here. Really despicable sexual inequality and exploitment, and things that have been going on that have always been going on, but that are starting to come to light now, at least at the time that we're recording this. To what extent does somebody like yourself look at that kind of thing, which many people consider news, and almost respond to it as sort of, duh, we've been trying to tell you this for years?
Yeah, I mean, it is sort of like, duh, we've been trying to tell you this for years, and yet I'm also like, I always come to defense of the people when they say, well, what if it's always been going on? Like, what's taken so long, and why hasn't anybody spoken up? And I always come to the defense of the people who have sort of been silent, because it's a cultural and it's a sort of like a societal program that's kept us from being able to share it or feeling comfortable sharing it. I would say that there was no law that said you can't speak up. But even though it has been going, and even myself personally, I go, well, I always knew this stuff, but I never told anyone either. And so it is sort of like, duh, but it's also like, I understand why it's taken so long, why people have felt like they don't have the right to speak up, or they don't have the right to tell their story. And now all of a sudden we do. And it does sort of feel like, duh. But it's also like, to me, it's like, oh, finally relief, because it's almost felt like we've all had sort of like duct tape over our mouths, like we couldn't, even if we wanted to, just because we didn't know how. And now people are starting to understand, oh, that's how you do it. And I feel like that's more of, it's like it's a legitimate example of how something goes from the subconscious to the conscious. Like, it was subconscious programming, but it's become conscious. And now that it's conscious, everybody's like, wait, whoa, I have something to say too. And so it's not really duh, because it's been in the recesses of our being. And yet at the same time, it's always been there. We just didn't know it. Like, we legitimately didn't know it, and I can understand how that would happen.
I guess the other side of duh is what? Like, and there's some, and I'm not trying to make light of any of this, Katie, but one of the other things that I perceive from where I'm sitting in Ontario, Canada, is that there are a lot of my friends in the United States that are, again, at the time that we're recording this in 2018, looking around going, what the heck is going on inside our culture? That things have come to light, attitudes, not just what I might call misogynistic attitudes toward women, but toward people of other races and other colors, and to just generalize about, if you're different than this XYZ model of a person, then
right.
Things are different. However, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too far. But what I perceive is that there are a lot of people that have been genuinely surprised to find that there is still such a prevalent amount, at least here in North America, of misogyny, racism, bigotry, and just oppression and a feeling of separateness. And how do you perceive people responding to that?
I think it's again, it's like that thing of like, if it's been in the subconscious for so long, I'm not surprised that nobody was aware of it, because that's the whole point of the subconscious. You know what I mean? It's like, it's designed to keep it quiet, and we all have a subconscious. So when somebody goes, what? I had no idea. I go, yeah, I can understand why you'd feel that way, because just like you, I have a subconscious. And if I don't consciously go looking for something, I would not it might be right under my nose too, and I don't realize it. You know what I mean? So I feel like in some ways there's a lot of people saying what's going on. I had no idea, and I think that's legitimate. Like, I think it's a legitimate thing that we start to go through and we go, wait, I thought this was over. And it's not. A lot of people say like you're naive or you're ignorant, or, you know, people throw a lot of words around in each other. And I think it's really basic. It's just like anything else. If it's not in your consciousness, you're not aware of it. And our society was not designed to embrace anything that would be in the subconscious, because the subconscious is designed to keep all that stuff locked away. You know, like, we have a subconscious for a reason, and we have cultural subconscious. So we all did it. And then, so when people go, what? Whoa, huh? I had no idea. I don't get mad and say, duh, you know, I've been trying to tell you this. I go, yeah, isn't it amazing that we have the capacity to bury this? Because we have, and I've done it too. And it's just, it's human. Like, it's just part of it. It's part of who we are. And we have the ability to deny things. It's really simple. But if we want to change, we can't deny it anymore. We have to look at it. And so now we're all looking at it going like, ooh, this is not pretty. This is really not pretty. But it's part of the process. Like anything, you know, if something's wrong, you have to come to terms with it. Then you can change it. You know, it's pretty simple, really, but it doesn't make the process any easier. Yeah,
exactly. Simple and easy are not necessarily congruent, are they?
No, I know.
Well,
very contradictory.
Speaking of the word simple, let's go back to where we started. The title of the book, Simply Woman, Stories from 30 Magnificent Women Who Have Risen Against the Odds. How did this come together for you, Katie?
So I ended up participating in this. The woman at the helm of this is this fabulous woman she's in Toronto, actually. She's not far from you, named Crystal Andrus Morissette. And she's been doing this for a very long time. And she's one of those people that has done a lot I watch her do a lot to help women. She really does. I mean, she genuinely does. And she has a training ground for women that she calls the SWAT Institute. And she works with women and she trains other women to work with women. And it's been amazing to watch her do it, because a lot of times you go, you can't possibly build an empire as a woman helping other women and make it a thriving business. And she has. But so she put this together, and I'm not someone that normally does these collaborative books, but I love her. I love everything about her. And I thought, you know, I am always working, and I have my own book, but I haven't published that yet. And I would like to do something with other women. And I don't have a lot of women in my corner, you know, I never had that like sisterhood of women that just cheer you on and like support one another. I really didn't have that. So I just went for it. I said, okay, I'm going to do this. And like, it's a very professional book. This is not like, you know, this was not a baby project. This was a serious project she put together. And I'm really, really glad that I did it, because not only did I learn a lot, but it's been so wonderful to just watch people cheer each other on without any competitive nature whatsoever. And I'm not accustomed to that. And so that was, I think, my favorite part. Aside from the fact that the stories are extraordinary. These women are extraordinary. And not all of them are like professional coaches, or they come from all walks of life, different places in the world, different countries. And that's what I love too, is that it's not just, it's diverse. It's culturally diverse. It's emotionally diverse. It's spiritually diverse. And I think that's so cool, you know, because it just shows you that there's more than one way to skin a cat, as they say.
What's something that you've learned about yourself through this process?
Well, what's interesting is that, like I mentioned, you know, I've been working on, the last time we spoke, I probably said, yeah, I've been working on my own book for like ever, right? And I could never get it together to sort of figure out how to do it, because I always wanted to write in a certain style. But then when you start to look at what sells and what the publishers want, like, I began to change what I originally wanted to do into what I thought would sell. And and then I never did it. Like I've spent all my time spinning my wheels trying to figure out what makes a New York Times bestseller instead of just writing the book the way I always wanted to. And so when it came time for me to write my story, I did it the way I always wanted to write a story, and it was so easy. And turns out it's a really great story. It's a really great form of storytelling. And that's what I found that I love the most about this was that I actually saw, no, the way that I tell stories and the way that I weave sort of fantasy and spirituality and truth and all of those things into one cohesive story is actually an art form, and it works. It's really cool. So that's what I learned was, I could have written this book. Well, I didn't, so it doesn't really matter. But what I always wanted to do, I could have done it then. I didn't have to spin my wheels trying to like figure out what's going to make it better. Like I could have done it. I always had, it's the Wizard of Oz, as it always is for me. I always had the power to do it. And that's what I found working on this book was, no, I'm a really good writer. I don't know why I always doubted that, but just that in itself was really fun for me to be able to do it and create this art form.
Where was it along the process that you realized that, Katie?
Well, so when we worked on this book in particular, it was there was an editor. Her name is Jackie, and so I met with Jackie. Right, I met with Jackie face to face, and I told her my story, and it was so interesting because she said, "Oh, you're so animated and fun. You have to tell this like fun animated story," and I kind of got mad at her because I thought, no, this is the opposite of what I want to do. I'm not supposed to be telling funny stories. I'm not funny. I'm not animated. I'm serious. I'm a serious healer. And just steering me away from who I am. And then I went off and I said, no, you know what? Here's the thing. You hire an editor for a reason. You know what I mean? Like she's a professional. This is what she sees. Maybe you should listen to her. Like maybe she has something, like maybe you want to take that suggestion and just see what that does for you. And so I went back and what I ended up doing was I wrote a version of it. I showed it to her. She gave me the feedback about making it animated and fun and some really great nuggets on how to tell little stories from my childhood. And then I went and I did the other sort of work that I do, which was completely channeled and channeled the same story in another way. And then I sat down and I put them together. And it was when I put them together that I saw, oh, okay, this is how it works. This is why the animation is so important. This is why the storytelling is so important. And this is sort of how you want to do this. And it ended up being what I always wanted to do in the first place. Much to, of course, not surprising. I went, oh, yeah. Remember like 5 years ago, here it is. That my original desire. I've just done it. And so that was cool. That was a nice surprise when I realized, oh, here I am. Same thing I always wanted to do. I just did it and I didn't even mean to.
It's an interesting irony, wouldn't you say, Katie, about the process of coming back to what we know about ourselves, or at least knew at some point. So I guess no, but having to have it shown to us sometimes,
right,
by someone else, like what your editor did for you.
Yeah. And it was funny because what she did was she sort of shined a light on the things that I kept trying to change. It's the same thing I always say, like the things that you think you need to change are actually the things that make you who you are. So stop changing and just be yourself. And it was those things. And she just she saw those pieces of myself and I kept saying like, no, we don't want those pieces because those pieces make me less powerful. But then you realize, wait a minute, who says that power has to look a certain way? And who says that by being animated, I'm animated. I'm creative. I'm joyful. I smile a lot. I have colorful language. I like sparkles. There's these things that make me who I am. And yet I kept trying to strip it away in order to be this like serious person, this like serious guru or whatever you think you need to be to help people. And then you go, oh, well, sometimes, no, you don't. Like just being who you are is actually far more powerful than trying to play some serious, if that's not who you are, it doesn't resonate anyway, you know? And that was kind of fun because it took me full circle to when I started, you know, like 8 years ago when I said, I'm going to do this and I'm going to write this book and it's going to be like, you know, like Bossy Pants, but it's also going to be like, you know, like a serious book and I'm going to make it work. And then I didn't do it. But then I accidentally did do it again.
Whenever I hear something inherently creative, you know, born of real imagination like that, I always have my mind kind of cast back to what it would have been like if your name was George Lucas back around 1975 or so. And if you were to describe what Star Wars has become out loud to somebody, and I wonder how people would think that sounds. You know, here's this intergalactic, I'm just using that as an example, yeah. Katie, but here's this intergalactic opera of humans, except one of them, his co-pilot is a gigantic, you know, walking Bigfoot, and they have talking robots. And it sounds ridiculous to say it out loud now. Imagine having the courage to carry forth an idea and try to try to get all of those other people in line with a vision that really only you can see because it comes from you. And so that's where I think it plays into another interesting balance, Katie. When you have your own creative vision and imagination, it's one thing to try to believe in yourself enough to let it come forward the way that it's just meant to, whatever that means. But where's the line between that and then also trying to get other people to maybe understand what it is that you're doing so that you can bring it to life and not compromise it along the way?
Right. Are you asking the answer to that question? Yeah, no. And I can say that that's been my greatest struggle because I'm so imaginative, you know, like I can see things nobody else can see because I have the ability to see with my imagination what most people can't. So that's hard in a sense because not everybody has that skill set, and that's sort of like what George Lucas had, where then what you end up doing is you have to, if you're someone, it's interesting that you mentioned him because recently there's that woman, I can't remember her name, but she has the quiz, how to fascinate, like what kind of fascinator you are, meaning like what's your value, what are your skill sets. And I came up with the exact same formula as George Lucas, meaning passion and creativity. Those were the two. Those were like the sweet spots. And having the passion and the creative ability. And like Walt Disney had it, like these visionaries, honestly, Albert Einstein, like there are people that can see things that other people can't see. And what I've had to do and what I was able to do sort of by working on this book was go, okay, I understand now, like that's the language I speak. I speak in that creative expression that it's very emotional. It's very, but it brings it to life. And so what I've had to do and what I would suggest anyone who's extremely creative, that's why people who are so creative struggle so much, because how do you take something that's so intangible because it's in your imagination and it's like it's there, you can like see it, you can feel it, you can taste it, you can do all of these things, but you can't hold it. So you can't show anyone in your hand, like, this is Mickey Mouse, like you have to draw it on paper, you have to sculpt it, or you have to map it out somehow. And that's where I think it gets tricky. And you have to have the patience to actually learn how to bring it from your imagination into reality. And you can do that in all different kinds of ways. But more than ever, I'm learning that is a huge, you think about John Lennon and that song, Imagine, right? That's exactly what he's talking about, right? Like he's talking about imagine, can you imagine this? And most people can't, but there are some people that can. And I'm one of those people, and you're one of those people, and George Lucas is one of those people that have the ability to really see things in a different way. And I don't know, somehow we just have to, you have to really just trust it and know it. And know that that's like me, instead of rejecting it and trying to change it and going, well, I'll just be serious. You can't. If that's not your nature, it will never work for you. So you've got to sort of like strike the gong and let it ring out. And eventually what happens is if you just let it reverberate and you don't try and control it, it begins to become real. It just takes a little bit longer, at least in my experience. And so I think that that's the first step, is not trying to control it or judge it or saying it's wrong. Because most people will tell me like, no, you can't do it that way. And I go, well, why not? Because, well, that's impossible. Well, but if you remember that you have an imagination, nothing's impossible. Nothing's impossible. So what does that mean? And most people get mad because they're like, no, that's not true. No, you can't say that. And I go, okay, well, then I'll tell them a story and I'll say, well, once upon a time there was a so-and-so and they were in prison and they imagined the bars were a garden and they were free. And they're like, oh, well, okay, that sounds like liberation. You know what I mean? And then I go, yeah, okay, so can you imagine yourself free? And I go, oh, yeah, well, that's possible. And you go, boom, there you go. So it's just, it's getting you sort of just like have to finesse it a little bit.
Listening to you talk, I'm just sitting here nodding my head, and you've articulated one of the things that's been such an enormous frustration to me, Katie, is that in the sales and marketing world and in the world that I'm in some of the time with speaking and whatnot, it's always, what's your elevator pitch? Or what are you an expert on? What's your niche? What's your, how do you help people? And that it's almost viewed as weakness or lack of focus. And I guess maybe it is. If you can't distill what you bring to people, in 10 words or less, or a couple of sentences or less. And
right.
And it frustrates me no end. It's like, okay, you want something new and revolutionary that's really going to make an impact for you. But you want it. You're telling me that you want it in a wrapper that it's already familiar to you. It's XYZ in 3 easy steps.
Right.
It doesn't work like that. And then it's this constant balance between, to use a phrase that's not very gentle, dumbing it down to meet somebody where they're at and what they expect. So that you can at least continue the conversation. It's tremendously frustrating to me, and over and over I see, we look at these people, some of whom you've named, that now we view as visionaries, but when we started, we thought they were kooks because you're not following the formula. And so when you are creative, maybe that flows back into what you were talking 10 minutes or so ago about where and why you inherently knew what story you wanted to tell, but you kept getting this tug to kind of go at, this is the way that I need to take it to the market, what will sell, which makes it all the more interesting to me, Katie, that it was somebody external, an editor, that said, no, you know what? You just need to be you.
Right. Well, and the thing was, what had happened was, we met via video camera, and she could see me telling the story, and I told her the story of what had happened, and she said, "You're so animated. You're so animated. Like I get everything just by watching you tell the story and the way you tell it. You need to just write it down the way you just told me the story." And I'm like, "But I can't do that because being animated is bad. I'm not a cartoon. I'm a human. Animation, that's something you watch on TV. That's a fairy tale. That's not real. And I need to be real. I need to be a serious woman that's been through pain and struggle. I can't tell you about my struggle through the lens of an animated character." And I thought, well, hold on a minute. What do I do for a living? What else do I do for a living? I'm a voiceover artist. I provide my voice to cartoons and toys and all these commercials. I am infamous for saying things like, open up a can of imagination, working with children and having the imagination and the freedom to create and craft things that speak to children. And I thought, okay, so I think she's on to something here, because she's right. There's nothing wrong with being animated. And I always thought that if I was animated, then I wasn't serious. And what I realized is, like, screw being serious, because there's something about joy and there's something to be said for the imagination. And that's everything. It's been everything from the moment I started. My very first website was animated, and there were bells that were like bring, and there were like butterflies flying. It was like Mary Poppins. It was like stepping into the chalk painting in Mary Poppins. And I remember thinking, I can't possibly do this because nobody's going to take me seriously. Nobody's going to think that I can help them. So I've got to take all that away and become serious. I've got to be a serious teacher. And now here I am going, yeah, but you know what? Like, nobody else can do the imagination like I can. Like, nobody can use the imagination to heal and teach you how to express yourself like I can. So maybe I should try it again and see what happens. And what ended up happening was I wrote this story, and I loved it so much because I said, boom, there it is. There's 30 different stories in this book, right? And everybody's got they've got different experiences, different stories, different narratives, different ways they tell the story. And that's what makes it so great. But my story is exactly what I am and the way I view my life. I am a living, breathing fairy tale. Like, I am a modern day myth. Just like you would read a story about Venus, and how Venus was born this way and her father did this, and she had this, the way we tell the stories about the goddesses. It's the same thing, only I live in 2018. But it's the same method of teaching. And what I began to realize is, if you look at the way they used to teach during Greece and Rome and Egypt, they did not sit and give serious lectures. They told myths and stories. They made art. They did plays. Why do you think we had the Greek gods and all of that stuff? It was entirely based on creativity. It was not serious. I mean, it was serious, but the Odyssey, Homer, the Iliad, like, that was their way of teaching and healing. It wasn't like scientific books always. There were people that did that as well, but there was a whole massive, that's what we study. You know what I mean? I thought, well, so why can't we still do that? Like, what's the harm in that? What would happen if we tried it that way again? Some really cool stuff happens. So I get it. And a lot of times people have said to me, well, how do you do what you do? And, what is your title? And I've said, well, like, I can't really explain it. And someone said to me, she said, well, you've got to have a title, or no, you're not going to have a successful business. And I was like, I used to believe that, but I don't know anymore. And then I said, okay, I am a wizard. I'm a wizard. Like, you want to give me a title? I'm a wizard. Okay. Cause that's what I do. Do you think a wizard could explain what a wizard did, but a wizard could do it? So I'm a wizard. And she was like, oh, I've never met a wizard. And I'm like, yeah, it's pretty cool. Right? Like, I'm not really a wizard, but she just wanted a name. She wanted a title so badly to put me in a box.
Yeah, I struggle with that too, Katie. I wonder if it's just a control issue or a mechanism that we've built through the generations to try to make sense out of things, to make ourselves feel more safe or secure. I don't know, but there just seems to be this race to create order or a system or something that makes sense, rather than just letting go and riding the wave. You talk about imagination. Wasn't it Einstein, who you mentioned earlier, I think, that said that imagination is more important than intelligence, or something to that effect?
Yeah, he did say that. And you know what else? According to and this is what I believe that your emotions and your imagination is an entirely another form of intelligence. It's an untapped potential, because you can have emotional intelligence, right? You can have creative intelligence. Like, if you don't know how to use your creativity, that's a whole nother system of intelligence, because I understand it's been getting clearer and clearer to me, because even my own mother the other day said, God, I wish that I could just have you speak for me, because you say things in such a simple way that just always makes sense. You just are like, you're a wordsmith. Like, you craft your words so well. And I thought, yeah, you know why? Because I speak the language of emotion. And I know that words have vibrations. So I choose my words according to the emotion, the emotional response that I want to get from you. Because I know that your emotions are more important than sometimes the things that you're thinking in your brain, because your brain isn't the only system of intelligence you have. You have an emotional intelligence system. And if I can speak to that, then I can help you more. So that's why I do that, and even my own mother can see it now, which is like so cool. But that's why he said that. You know what I mean? Like, feelings, that's a whole intelligence system. It tells you so much. And here we are going, no, I don't need to worry about what I feel like. I just need to make money. I'm like, not me. And when someone reads my chapter, like, I don't want you to just know that I went through trauma. Like, that's not what I want. I want to stir the imagination and like the feelings. I want you to like taste the story. Like, I want you to be able to taste it and be like, oh, wow, I know what she was eating, because I'm salivating just reading the chapter. Like, I'm there. And that's an art form, like, that's the imagination. It's so valuable. I think that because we live for a long time, also is very powerful. And I think that for a long time, we wanted to control it, because it's like, if you can imagine anything and do it, that makes you like so powerful.
I want to go back to something that you said near the beginning of our discussion. And you mentioned something along the lines of never having really had the sisterhood. And so, to clarify, you've mentioned a couple of times this book, Simply Woman, Stories from 30 Magnificent Women Who Have Risen Against the Odds. Obviously, it's yourself, 29 others. So it's a group. Well, first of all, before I get to this question, maybe let me ask you this first, Katie. To what extent, if at all, have you had any interaction with these other contributors?
Oh, we have a Facebook group, and we interact like every day. I know these women better than a lot of people now. I've really gotten to know them. I've grown to love them, because we have been going through this process together. And it's sort of a scary process. A lot of them are not like me, where, I've been doing this for a long time. So I don't have an issue with telling my story. Like, I think it's fun. But a lot of them are very scared. And so we've been there to like really nurture each other and encourage each other and just say, you have every right to share your story. And that to me has brought me so much closer to them. It's very real. Like, it's a real sisterhood, even though I've never met them. I will be meeting them shortly, but I know them very well.
So when we had our initial discussion, it's episode 40 for anybody that either hasn't heard that or wants to go back and listen to it. It's called Learning to Love Yourself. Among the things that you shared when we spoke last year was how, well, you went into more detail about how isolating your experience was as a teenager and a young woman, that not only, maybe you can describe it quickly for a bit to help me get it, because I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if I'm remembering correctly, I mean, a lot of them were out and out nasty to you just simply because of the way that you looked.
Yeah, well, and what's interesting, the chapter, the title of my chapter is called The Princess and the Prisoner, and that's what I titled it. And that's what it's all about. It's about how isolated I felt. And I don't talk too much in the book about sort of the way I was treated by other people, but I talk about how I felt and how much I struggled to keep sort of my authentic self hidden away, because I wanted people to like me so much. And that's what was so tragic about it, if you think about it, because it still wasn't like a loving experience, because I was so busy like trying to keep myself hidden that I just kept attracting like all of the shame, like the haters came no matter what. Like, it was like, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, because whether I was playing to the external version of me or the internal version, which was the one that I sort of locked away, there was always somebody that didn't like me, like that's life. And I think that in itself, learning how to be in the world, a lot of people will say you have to learn how to be in the world, and you have to take account of what reality is. And I would say, yeah, you do. But, also you need to understand that reality, like, what is reality? So those people were mean to me and I was very isolated. If I knew what I knew now, it wouldn't have hurt me because I knew that wasn't the true reality, So it was all about that. It's always been about that. It's like, how much value are you putting on the external feedback of others? Because it didn't matter what I did. I was always going to get that. I was always going to get somebody that didn't like me. And because I was who I was, I took it very personally. And it didn't matter who you were. One person being unkind to me destroyed me. Whether it was 1 or 50, didn't matter. Even if there was one, I couldn't take it. I could not take it.
On one hand, I feel like exploring that more because I think it would add some more context to what we're talking about. But on the other hand, you've told that story fully and quite transparently. So in the interest of time, I'm going to encourage somebody that has not heard it and wants to understand a little bit more about what we're talking about to go back and listen to episode 40 of this podcast, because you painted a pretty clear picture there of what it was like. But let's bring it back to the timeline that we're on now, because you've given that context. I really see how, or think I see, Katie, how it must be a really fulfilling thing for you to finally, at least in one sense, express who you really are in a way that you are meant to express it within a context, in terms of the sisterhood or all of these other women who are contributing, that you didn't enjoy back when you were younger. How does that feel when you think of it that way?
It's really amazing, and it is really extraordinary. And I've been in all different kinds of communities, and I even came through a spiritual community where I had a teacher, and I look at that and I go, even when I was there, I still didn't feel like I could fully be myself, because there was still that fear of being kicked out, or that fear of not being liked for being who you are, or disappointing the teacher, or it's something that I've struggled with my whole life, was like, if I'm really who I am, like, am I going to get in trouble? Like, am I going to get kicked out? And it's fascinating that's followed me all the way to being where I am now. And I have to say that if I were still in that, and I love having teachers and being in those families, they're so valuable and amazing. But at some point I realized, at some point I've got to get myself out of all of these spaces and just be myself and do what I came here to do, which is to stand on my own 2 feet and tell my story. And I can't do that in a vacuum. And I can't do that in any sort of space that's limiting me. So I had to get out. And when I found these women, it's been really phenomenal, because I've never had that opportunity where I actually was able to put all the pieces together. And everything has been a part of the journey, and all of the experiences have gotten me, exactly where I am. And I've worked with many teachers and been to many astrologers and many intuitives, and I've worked with a lot of different people to get where I am and to help me. And every single time I would meet with anybody, I would always get another piece. And what it feels like now is that I've got the piece, right? And what's even more funny about all of this is I mentioned the teacher, right? And the last thing he ever said to me was, he said, "What do you want?" And I said, "I want to be able to see," and this is a perfect example of the creative expression, because he said, "What do you want?" And I said, "I can't tell you what I want, but I can tell you what it looks like. And what I want is to be able to see all the way to the bottom. I want to be able to see all the way to the bottom of who I am." And he said, "Oh, that's easy. You want peace." And he just knew by the way explained it. And creatively, that's what I wanted. I wanted stillness. I wanted clarity. I wanted depth. I wanted to be able to see all of the pieces and not like have an issue. And that's what I feel like now is I've got peace. I've got peace in many ways. And also I've got all the pieces and I put them back together. So it's pretty cool.
What can you tell me about Women Are Rising?
Women Are Rising has been sleeping. So that's my podcast. And it's actually been sort of dormant for a little bit because I've had to set it aside while I worked on this project. But much like this book, I'm very dedicated to sharing the kinds of stories that inspire you to keep going, because one thing that I know and I understand is that as long as trauma and shame and these experiences remain in the subconscious, they will keep coming back. We will not get rid of them. The only way to get rid of it is to bring it from the subconscious to the conscious. I've said that a couple times today, I know. And what I mean is that we can't have this stuff like hanging around in our spiritual closets anymore, or our mental closets. And so my goal with that podcast is to bring in the stories, bring in the interviews. And like I said, it's been sort of, it's been quiet. I haven't posted an interview in a little while, and that's partly my own fault because I started to, again, judge it and say, oh, this isn't doing what it's supposed to be doing, and I need to change the format to make it successful, or blah, blah, blah. And then I went back and realized, no, it's really just about the stories. It's about the bringing those things into your consciousness, because it's just like a little light bulb. It's just like the way it worked for me. Everything I do is based on experience. And my experience was, until I knew that I was in pain, I was always in pain, and until I knew that something traumatizing had happened to me and it wasn't okay, it just kept happening. Until someone shined a light on the wall in front of me and said, see that? That's a wall. I go, oh my God, I didn't know that was a wall. No wonder my face is black and blue. I just kept walking into it. So that's its purpose, is to just show us where the walls are, show us what's happening and why. And just literally by going, oh, wow, that happened to me too, or I'm not alone. It changes everything.
Yeah, I think there's a real connection that's created paradoxically when we open up and we willingly put forth the things that almost by default we feel like we should be keeping inside because it's going to make us even more separate from other people. It seems to have the reverse effect. It actually draws us closer together. And one way to start, even if you are a little closed up, I think is to read or to listen to some of those stories of other people that have been able to open up a little bit. And I know that there are a lot of episodes that are there and available, regardless of the fact of whether you might have produced some new episodes recently or not. The beauty of this medium, Katie, is that unless you take those all down, they are there for anyone for whenever they want to access them. And you've got a pile of them there, don't you?
I do. Yeah, we have a bunch of them there, and I actually have a bunch that I recorded before that will go up, and then there's also some that with these women with this new book coming out. I have every intention of bringing those women on and talking to them because they have these stories too, and I just it amazes me to find out. The more I see this, the things that have happened to people, it's that we talked in the beginning about that, huh? Of course this is happening. And it's horrific. A lot of it's horrific, absolutely horrific stuff. And this isn't a thing of I like to talk about horrific things. It's not about that. But what it is about is the fact that, we've always been saying, in order for us to even imagine that there's another way, first we have to see that the way we're in. And that was the reason why I started it in the first place. And I believe in it because it's just a matter of listening. And having this book is a really great way to sort of tie the two back together.
It's interesting, Katie. Over and over and over again, I get people that have joined me as you are right now for a conversation on this show, and at the end of it, they'll say something to me along the lines of, wow, I've never shared that with anybody before. And when I ask them why they think that is, inevitably some version of no one's ever asked, or no one's been willing to sit and listen. Is the answer to that. And isn't it amazing how much, I don't know if I want to use the word healing, but how much good it can do just to put forth what's true to you, what's your experience, to even give it the opportunity to be heard.
Yeah, because it literally all it takes is taking it from that closet into the light. You know what I mean? I mean, like, there's spiritual things behind it as well, that back it up, saying, you know, as long as it's in the dark, it will stay as like a ghost, as a fear, or as a pattern or a belief or whatever it is. And then the minute you go, oh, wow, I never shared that before, it takes away all its power, and then you're free. So I think it's fantastic. And yeah, people don't ask those questions because people don't want to ask those questions, because it's not always pretty what comes out. But isn't that part of all of this? And I think that sort of, you know, when I said at the beginning, I always felt like, well, I can't be joyful and I can't be all of these things, imagination and this and that, because then I'm not powerful. What I forgot was that law, right? That if you have the ability to face the things that other people don't want to face, and that's one of the things that I've worked very hard to get to the point of saying, you know, look, I have no secrets, and that's the biggest thing. You can't have secrets, right? If you're willing to be in the public like that, you can't have them. But what that means is I've done all of it. I've gone there. I've gone to every corner. That's what I've been doing. So that means that there's nothing you can tell me that I'm not willing to listen to. You know, and there are a lot of people out there that say, I don't want to know about that. And I'm like, you tell me. I'll listen. I'm not scared. You know, and that's huge.
Yeah, choosing to ignore it or shove it into the corner doesn't make it not be.
No, it makes it worse. It makes it louder. Like secretly louder, you know. It's like that, the voice in the back of your head, and it just like, maybe it starts as like a little scratch or a little squeak, but then before you know it, it's like a banshee and it's screaming, and you can't. Then you're in trouble. So we may as well deal with it when it's calm. And that's the other thing. I think that the having the gentle approaches, like the imagination and creativity and emotional expression, like you can blast something, like you can like set it on fire, and you can roast it, and you can beat it. There's a lot of ways to deal with things to get rid of it. You know what I mean? Like you can fight hard, you can shoot it, or you can love it. It's a different path. But my experience, and I've witnessed both. I've had those experiences. I've been blasted good, and I've been blasted hard. And I never got the same results as someone that listened to me kindly and lovingly and said, this is how I can help you. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. I feel so much better because I don't feel beaten. I feel like I feel like loved. I feel heard. I feel listened to, instead of like I feel ashamed. You know, like shame. We don't have time to get into that, but that shame sits at the bottom of the whole scale. You know, shame is like the bedrock, and if you spend your time hanging out there, it's really hard to get where you want to go.
Yeah, Katie, at the time that we're having this discussion, and you're just on the cusp of this book, Simply Woman, being released with your chapter as a part of it, The Princess and the Prisoner.
Yeah.
What excites you most thinking about this, if you'll pardon the pun, next chapter in your journey that's right upon you now?
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, number one, I have copies of the book to sell, right? I have my own my own set of books. And, if you go to my website, if you went to katiekozlowski.com, you could buy a copy of the book. And that excites me that I have a product. I have something tactile that you can buy, and I'll put it in the mail and I'll send it to you. It's on my website. But beyond that, I'm excited about the fact that I have a tool, and I keep thinking, as much as I love selling the books directly to people, I just keep closing my eyes and praying, saying, just help me get them into the hands of the people that need them. Yeah. That doesn't mean I don't just care about selling books. I love selling books. But beyond that, what I'm excited about is that there are people in the world that need this book, that by reading this book will be healed or will be enlightened or will be raised up, will have some sort of experience. And so I'm thinking about creative ways to make that happen. I'm thinking about, can I do a fundraiser? And can I say, if someone doesn't want to buy the book, if they donate $5, that goes towards a fund and it pays for books. And then I can send the books to women's shelters. Can I build workshops, and can I fundraise? And people, if someone doesn't want to buy the book to support me, that's okay. This isn't a book for everyone, but they could still give me $5. And then I can go into a women's shelter and I can lead a workshop and I can give them the book as a gift. And then the books are paid for and my time is paid for. Things like that are what I'm really, really excited about, because that's why I do what I do. I don't do it to sell books. I do it to get the information in people's hands. And now I have a tool, I have an actual really powerful tool that I can put in someone's hand, and I can go to a women's shelter, and somebody that's been, say, beaten or raped or whatever they've gone through, I can say, here's a book of 30 stories of women who've been through what you've been through. You can read this book and it will bring you hope. And that to me is amazing.
Yeah, books are powerful, right, Katie? Like, powerful. They hold the energy of the people that contributed to. I mean, they're pieces of the people that have created them. And you can literally choose to go and find hope and to empower yourself in whatever area it is that interests you. As long as you've got the opportunity to walk into a library, you can start to grow and learn and see what other people have been through, just through the magic of how powerful I've found, at least in my own journey, books to be. And so to hear you talking about how you can, I mean, it's almost like you've got a bridge into your own soul that you're able to offer to somebody. Take this if you want it. If you don't, that's okay too. But this is something that can maybe be helpful, that's not just a piece of me, but of 29 others and their authentic journeys. And hopefully it'll help you too. That sounds magical, even just talking about it.
Yeah, and it is. I know these women. I've read many. I haven't read every single one of them, but I've skimmed every single one of them. I've read chunks of every single one of them, and they're it is really an extraordinary offering of slices of life, slices of reality, and I think that is just so cool to be able to just say, like, these things have happened. Like, these are real stories. We watch them on TV all the time. People love to watch SVU and Law and Order, but those aren't real stories. Those are made up stories on TV. So if we really want to start, and sometimes people give me a hard time, because that's what they do. And I'll say to them, look, if you really want to make this world a better place, and if you really think you know so much about what people should be doing and how people should be acting, then why don't you pick this book up and read it? And then you come back to me and you give women advice on how they should behave. But you read the book first. You read these women's stories. And that is like, it's just really amazing, because these women it takes courage to tell your story. And I'm with them. And I'm with anyone that needs to tell their story. I get messages all the time from people, and I'm like, wow. I mean, I'm humbled that people find peace in sharing it with me. That is not an advertisement to fill my inbox with your stories, but it happens. And I see them, they come across my desk, and I'm just like, I cannot believe that this really happens, but it does. And I think it happens to everyone. And that's why it's so heartbreaking, because if we would just let people know that if something happens to you that doesn't make you wrong and you can share it, then we'd have a lot of happier people walking around, and it would stop happening. It would no longer be a secret, you know?
Hear, hear. Katie, I'm thrilled for you. I'm excited for you with what's about to come, and who knows what other adventures this will unlock and to fuel you to let more of yourself forward in the creative projects that you'll take on down the road. I look forward to watching that happen and supporting that happen and having you come back here and talk about it. So good luck with this, and congratulations, and thank you for continuing to lead the charge, because I know it's going to help some people, and thanks so much for the time.
Thank you so much. I always love talking to you.
The best place to connect with Katie and to learn more about her is on her website, katiekozlowski.com. Katie is Katie, and I'll spell Kozlowski for you. K-O-Z, or Z, depending on where you are, L-O-W-S-K-I. KATIEKOZLOWSKI.com, or just go to episode 71 of Journeys with the No Schedule Man. I'll post all her links from their website, her podcast, womenarerising.org is where you can find that. And on social media, you'll find Katie on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest, LinkedIn, and SoundCloud. All of those links are available at episode 71 at noschedulemanpodcast.com. Now, if you like this episode, you're going to like episode 40, also featuring Katie Kozlowski. It's called Learning to Love Yourself, and she tells the whole story of growing up and young adulthood, being a young woman, and all of the trials and tribulations that went with that, what she realized about herself and the people around her. And it is a fabulous, fabulous episode for anyone that is struggling sort of with their sense of self-worth. And if you're at all investigating the idea of what loving yourself actually means, go listen to that. Episode 40 with Katie Kozlowski. Episode 69 with Sue Kerr is another one that I might recommend. It's called Mastering Fear. And Sue is another person who, like me, I would call myself maybe a late bloomer. But Sue's certainly bloomed now. And she is looking the fears that held her back for so much of her life right in the eye. And she's doing some incredible things. We started that conversation with me asking her about what it was like when she was standing right on the edge of an airplane at so many thousand feet up in the air. She was going to jump out of to face her fear of heights. Well, that's where we started that. That's a doozy of an episode, Mastering Fear, episode 69 with Sue Kerr. And along the lines of the courage it takes to tell your own story, I'd encourage you to listen to episode 65 with Sunil Godse. It's called How to Follow Intuition to Success. Sunil is talented in a lot of areas, but he's also become very well known with what he calls intuitionology, the intuition guy, understanding that voice, that gut, your intuition, your instincts, who you really are, and how to recognize that and how he's used that to guide him to success in all areas of his life. You can find those and all past episodes of this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, and at noschedulemanpodcast.com if you're in the United States. They've got us on the U.S. feeds of iHeartRadio and Google Play Music. If you want to connect with me, I'm easy to find. Just look for No Schedule Man on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or Twitter, or visit me at kevinbulmer.com, noscheduleman.com. We'll take you to the same place, and while you're there, you can learn more about my speaking, coaching, and other content. And another reminder to be a part of my online coaching community for daily access to me, which means positive support, encouragement, empowerment, and creative collaboration. Visit theturtletribe.com. I'd love to see you in there. In the meantime, thanks so much for taking some time and listening to me and Katie today. I do hope you found this helpful. If so, please do subscribe so that we can see you again, and maybe consider passing it along to somebody else you think it might help. I hope to have you here again next time on Journeys with the No Schedule Man.
Just a little deja vu.